All right, so today we're going to look at something a bit different. Foundational Leadership Lessons by Jordan Sterling. I'm sure we've all seen tons of books on leadership.
Oh, yeah.
But this one is not like your typical
Yeah.
kind of climb the ladder corporate advice kind of thing.
Yeah, it's actually really refreshing. Sterling kind of focuses on how his own journey shaped how he leads. He takes us from like a one-room schoolhouse
Wow.
to the world of like corporate law and then eventually to executive positions. He shows how all these experiences, even though they seem totally unrelated, really built a strong foundation.
That's what really caught my eye, too. I mean, a one-room schoolhouse,
Yeah,
you wouldn't think that that's like the typical place where a big corporate leader comes from.
right.
But Sterling really argues that that environment taught him some pretty crucial skills.
Yeah.
He had to learn to be independent, solve problems on his own, and how to work with people of all ages. Think about that for a minute. How often are you in a situation where you got to figure things out by yourself and adapt to different personalities and find solutions?
It's like a crash course in resourcefulness, really. And all those skills, what some might call soft skills, I guess, became the foundation of how he leads. He didn't learn those things in some seminar. They were just part of everyday life in that one-room schoolhouse. I bet you've got some of those unconventional experiences in your past, too. You know those moments where you were kind of pushed outside your comfort zone? Think about what you learned from them. You might be surprised what strengths you've already built without even realizing it.
That's so true. And his path that wasn't conventional kept going with his choice of college. He went to a small university, which a lot of people might see as a disadvantage in the competitive business world.
Right.
But Sterling says the opposite.
Yeah.
He says small universities give you chances to lead that you just don't see at the big schools.
Yeah, for example, he was able to be a leader in student organizations and he became really close with the faculty. Those are things that you can easily miss out on at big universities. Smaller settings force you to step up, take charge, and really get to know the people you work with. And later on in life, those skills really come in handy when you're in leadership roles.
So if you're in school right now, don't underestimate the power of where you are. Even if it's not that big name school everyone talks about. What are the opportunities there? What relationships can you build? And if you're not in school anymore, what are those unconventional places in your life where you can learn? Maybe it's like volunteering or a community project, or even an online group where you can connect with people and build new skills.
Sterling's story reminds us that being a leader isn't just about where you went to school or what's on your resume. It's about using every opportunity you get, no matter where you find it.
Totally. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Early on in his career, Sterling had a job selling credit cards over the phone. It's not exactly what you think of when you think of a future executive, right?
It's true.
But he totally changes how we see that and calls it a time of huge personal growth.
He's got a point. Think about it. You're constantly getting rejected, you have to think on your feet, and you're basically getting better at communication with every call. And honestly, good communication is the foundation of effective leadership.
He talks about developing resilience, handling tough conversations, and learning to stay calm when things get crazy. He learned all those things in that credit card job, and they became really important later on in his career. It makes you wonder what your toughest job was. And what did you learn from it that you still use today?
Sometimes the things we want to forget the most are the things that teach us the most valuable lessons. They give us that resilience, that ability to come back from setbacks and keep going.
For sure. Sterling's all about taking those hard experiences and making them into strengths. Now, another thing that really makes him different from other authors on leadership is that he is seriously focused on integrity and transparency. He doesn't just talk about those things. He shows how he used them with real-life examples.
One that really stood out to me was his idea that you should be willing to sign anything that you ask anyone else to sign. That's a big statement about taking responsibility and ethical leadership.
It's simple, but it's profound. And there's this great story about when he was the chief compliance officer for a global car dealership. He had a big disagreement with the CEO about a decision. That could have easily turned into a power struggle.
Oh, absolutely.
But Sterling chose to do something different. He was completely transparent.
Huh.
Instead of trying to hide his concerns or pretend the risks weren't that big, he put everything out in the open. He explained his view, the possible consequences, and what he thought was the best way to move forward. Not every leader would be brave enough to do that, especially when they're talking to someone with more power.
Very true.
But here's the thing. Transparency builds trust. The CEO might not have agreed with Sterling at first, But because Sterling was open and honest, he earned the CEO's respect, and in the end, he had an impact on how the decision was made.
It shows that integrity and transparency aren't just buzzwords. They're powerful ways to get through tough situations and build strong relationships.
This brings up a really important question for all of us. Think about your own values. Have you ever been in a situation where your integrity was tested? How did you handle it? Sterling's story reminds us that sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that show who we are as leaders.
Totally agree. It's in those moments that our true character shines through. Now, are you ready for an idea that's totally different? Sterling really believes in saying, I don't know.
I know, right? It almost sounds crazy, especially in the business world, where everyone's supposed to have all the answers. But Sterling says that admitting you don't know something shows honesty, that you're willing to learn, and get this, it builds trust.
Think about it. When someone acts like they know everything, it creates this distance. But when someone's willing to say, I don't know, it shows they're humble and want to learn. Those are things people respect.
He even tells a story about a time when doing this really worked for him. Someone asked him a question he didn't know the answer to, but instead of trying to make something up, he just said, I don't know, but I'll find out and get back to you. And the person who asked the question actually respected him more for being honest.
It shows that being real can be better than pretending you know everything. And it helps create a place where people feel okay asking questions and saying when they need help.
Here's a challenge for you. When was the last time you said, I don't know at work? What happened? Maybe it's time to try Sterling's approach and see what happens. You might be surprised by the good things that come from it.
It's definitely a different way of thinking, but it can make people trust each other more and work together better.
Now, along the same lines of going against what everyone thinks, Sterling says to be careful about trying to be perfect all the time. He says knowing when something is good enough actually frees you up to do the really important things.
He's not saying we should be okay with doing things poorly, but there's a difference between aiming for excellence and getting stuck on tiny details that don't really matter.
Exactly. And this is where some of those leadership skills come in, like managing your time and knowing what to prioritize. Knowing when to let go of being perfect is key to using your time well. Think about it. How much time do you spend trying to make things perfect when they could just be good enough? That's time you could be using on bigger tasks or even just taking a break.
It's about understanding that we don't have unlimited time and energy. We need to be smart about how we use them. Sometimes good enough is really the smartest way to go.
And that connects to what we were talking about earlier. Remember those unconventional experiences Sterling talked about, like being in that one-room schoolhouse? Those experiences taught him to focus on what's important and get things done, even when there wasn't much to work with. Those early lessons became super important for how he managed his time later in his career.
It's really interesting how things that seem totally unrelated can actually connect in surprising ways. It shows how important it is to think back on our own experiences, even the parts that seem like they have nothing to do with what we do now. Those experiences might have taught us valuable lessons that can help us be better leaders in ways we never thought of.
It's all about making those connections and seeing the patterns in our own lives. Now, think about your own life for a minute. What are some areas where you tend to get stuck trying to be perfect? Could letting go of that actually help you? Maybe it's a project at work, something you need to do at home, or even a personal goal. Could doing things good enough free you up to focus on what really matters?
It's definitely something to think about. Sometimes letting go of that need to be perfect can make you more efficient, more creative, and maybe even give you some peace of mind.
So we've talked about a lot in this first part of our look into Jordan Sterling's foundational leadership lessons. From what he learned in that one-room schoolhouse to the power of saying, I don't know, and being okay with good enough, Sterling makes us think differently about leadership and how to find strength in places we might not expect.
Welcome back to our deep dive into foundational leadership lessons. We're going to be exploring some of the more subtle parts of Sterling's ideas about leadership, particularly his emphasis on strategic silence.
Yeah, this idea really stuck with me. It seems kind of counterintuitive, in a world where everyone is always trying to get attention.
Yeah.
But Sterling says it's powerful, and he actually learned it way back in his law career.
He tells this story about a court case where he presented what he thought was a super strong argument, and then he wanted to keep talking, to really drive his points home.
Right.
But his mentor, this experienced lawyer, told him to just stop, to let the judge take it all in without feeling pressure.
Interesting.
It's like when you're trying to convince someone of something, sometimes the more you push, the more they resist.
Yeah.
Giving them space to think can actually be more convincing.
I
And
said,
guess what? They won the case.
wow.
Yeah. So Sterling learned from that sometimes the best argument is made by not saying anything at all. It's about trusting your prep work, reading the room, and having the confidence to just let the silence do the talking.
Hmm.
It's subtle, but so valuable, and it's not just for the courtroom. It applies to so many areas of life.
True.
Sterling describes a similar situation when he was leading a team at this automotive parts manufacturer.
Okay.
He presented a proposal during a big meeting. Again, he felt that urge to over-explain, to fill every pause with details, but he didn't.
What happened?
Well, the executives actually had time to think, to process the information, and they ended up making a good decision. It makes you wonder, how often do we feel like we have to fill the silence when it might be better to just stop talking?
It's almost like an instinct, right?
It is. But Sterling's point is that silence can actually make decision-making better. It gives people time to process, to form their own opinions, and in the end, they come to a more thoughtful conclusion.
And it builds respect, too, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
When we're comfortable with silence,
Yeah.
it shows we're confident in our ideas and in the people around us.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to something else in leadership that can be tough: disagreeing with your boss.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Sterling knows it can be really hard, especially when there's that power dynamic. But he says it's important.
Yeah, I can see that.
He says speaking up, even when it feels uncomfortable, can stop mistakes from happening. It can lead to new ideas, and it can actually make your boss trust you more. Now, I know this can be a tricky situation. It's not about being argumentative or disrespectful.
Right.
Sterling suggests a very specific way to disagree respectfully and so that it's effective.
Okay, how's that?
He emphasizes timing, choosing the right time to bring up your concerns,
Makes sense.
and framing your disagreement in a constructive way, like focusing on solutions instead of just complaining about problems.
Right.
He tells a story about a time when he had to disagree with the CEO at the global automotive dealership. It was about a proposed compensation plan that Sterling felt was unfair and could cause some problems with compliance.
For people who aren't familiar with that term, compliance risks are basically situations where a company could break laws or rules which can have really bad consequences.
Right. So Sterling was in a tough spot.
Yeah.
But instead of avoiding the conflict, he did what we talked about before. He was completely transparent.
Huh.
He explained his concerns, gave research and data to back them up, and offered other solutions that would achieve what the CEO wanted, but without the risks.
So the CEO was receptive to that.
He was. He acknowledged the risks and was willing to consider Sterling's alternative plan. It's a great example of how disagreeing the right way with respect and with solutions in mind can actually lead to good change.
So it's not always bad to disagree.
Right. It's a reminder that healthy disagreement can help both the individual and the whole organization to grow.
It takes courage, though.
It does?
Sometimes it's easier to just go along with things, especially when it's your boss. But Sterling's story shows that respectfully challenging things can make things better.
Now let's talk about something that often gets forgotten in the business world: the power of listening, something Sterling talks about throughout the book.
Yeah, he really believes that leaders should spend more time listening than talking. It seems simple enough,
It does.
but I think it's one of the most overlooked skills in leadership.
I agree. We're so focused on getting our own point across that we forget to really listen to what others are saying. Sterling says that active listening is super important for building trust, getting a deeper understanding of your team's point of view, and ultimately making smarter choices.
So listening is more than just hearing.
Way more.
He even goes as far as to say that listening is a strategic tool for leadership. When you really listen, you get important information, you build stronger connections, and you create a space where people feel heard and respected.
It also helps you catch problems early on. When people feel like they can come to you with their worries, you can deal with issues before they become huge messes.
Right. And that connects to another thing. Sterling talks about cultural understanding. In today's global workplace, it's more important than ever to understand cultural differences and how to adjust how we talk to each other.
He talks about creating a place where different perspectives are welcome and respected.
That's important.
It is. It means being careful about our language, noticing nonverbal cues, and being open to learning from others.
How do we do that?
Well, he suggests things like cultural awareness training programs, celebrating cultural differences through events, and encouraging open conversations about these differences. These are all practical things leaders can do to create a more inclusive and harmonious environment.
Because when people feel like they belong, they're more engaged, more productive, and more likely to share their best ideas.
Definitely. Inclusivity isn't just the right thing to do, it's good for business.
Now let's talk about something that often gets lost in the corporate world, building genuine relationships.
Ah, yes. Sterling argues that real connections are key to success, both with your team and with people outside your company.
What's a good example of that?
He uses the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company. They're known for their amazing customer service. And a big reason for that is their focus on building real relationships. They give their employees the power to go above and beyond to give personalized service.
I like that.
And they encourage care and respect among their employees, which makes the experience better for guests. They get that happy employees lead to happy customers.
It makes sense.
Right? It's a win-win. And it goes beyond just customer service.
Yeah.
When you have strong relationships with your coworkers, you're more likely to work well together, support each other, and get through tough times as a team.
So it helps with internal and external stuff.
It does. And those relationships can go beyond the workplace too. Networking is super important for career growth, and making real connections with people in your field can open up doors to opportunities you never even knew existed.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that happen.
Right. It's about building a community both inside and outside your company.
Speaking of building relationships, Sterling also talks about that tricky balance of managing client expectations while staying true to your own professional opinions.
Yeah, that can be a tough one.
It is. You want your clients to be happy, but you also have to be honest and give your best advice, even if it's not what they want to hear.
Right. He tells a story from his MBA program where he was working on a consulting project for a new soccer franchise.
Okay.
The owner had these huge goals for attendance numbers that Sterling and his team thought were unrealistic given the budget.
It's a classic example of needing to balance what the client wants with what's actually possible.
Exactly. And it can be so tempting to just tell the client what they want to hear.
Yeah.
But that doesn't help them in the long run.
So how did Sterling handle it?
Well, he presented his team's research and analysis in a clear way, explaining why they thought the attendance goals were unlikely. But he didn't stop there. He also offered other strategies and explained what it would take to actually reach those ambitious goals, like maybe changing the budget or marketing plans.
Fun.
It's about being honest, but also focused on solutions. You're not just shutting down their ideas, you're offering helpful insights and helping them find a way forward.
And it's about building trust, too. When you're honest with your clients, even when it's hard, it shows them you're looking out for them. It reinforces that you're a partner, not just someone who's trying to make them happy.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears and talk about training and development, something that's often overlooked in business, but Sterling thinks is super important.
I'm all about good training.
Sterling really believes in having training programs that are practical and effective. He says training shouldn't just be a check-the-box kind of thing. It should be engaging, relevant, and something employees can actually use in their jobs.
Yeah, I've been to some training that's just so boring.
I know, right? Yeah.
It's a waste of time.
Sterling gives this example from the global automotive dealership, where he had to create a training program on a specific risk area. Instead of just presenting a bunch of boring theory, they did things differently.
How so?
They used real-life scenarios, they brought in employees to share their experiences, and they even used humor to make it more fun.
That's a good idea.
And it worked really well. The employees not only remembered the information better, they also felt more confident about actually using it in their work. Think about the training programs you've been to. Which ones were actually helpful? I bet the ones that were engaging and relevant had the biggest impact.
Definitely. It shows that the company is investing in their employees' growth and development, and that can boost morale and make people want to stay.
Exactly. And speaking of investment, Sterling dedicates a whole chapter to the importance of investing in your team through mentorship and coaching.
Mentoring is so powerful.
He believes that mentorship is more than just giving advice. It's about building a genuine connection, offering support, and helping the people you're mentoring reach their full potential.
He talks about some successful mentoring programs at companies like GE and Deloitte. These programs focus on giving structured guidance, regular feedback, and giving people chances to take on tough roles. They've been super effective at developing future leaders and creating a culture where people are encouraged to grow.
Now think about your own career. Who has mentored you? What did you learn from them? And have you ever had the chance to mentor someone else? Mentorship goes both ways. You learn as much as you teach.
I've learned a ton from being a mentor.
Me too. And it's so rewarding to see someone you've mentored succeed.
For sure. It's about paying it forward, and it creates this ripple effect.
Yeah.
The more people who are mentors, the stronger our future leaders will be. Now let's talk about something that can be difficult, but is so important for growth discipline.
Right. Sterling doesn't believe in discipline as punishment.
So what does he think it's for?
He sees it as a chance for learning and getting better.
Okay, I like that.
He emphasizes being clear about expectations, consistently enforcing rules, and most importantly, providing enough training before taking any disciplinary action.
So training is key.
Absolutely. He tells the story about a situation at the automotive parts manufacturer where an employee was doing something wrong.
Okay.
At first, they wanted to give him a serious punishment,
Oh, wow.
but it turned out he had never been trained on the specific rule he broke.
No.
They realized they messed up by not giving him proper training. So they took a softer approach, gave him the training he needed, and in the end, things were resolved fairly.
That's good.
It shows that sometimes what looks like a discipline problem is really just a lack of training.
Yep.
And it highlights the importance of having clear rules, communicating them well, and giving employees the support they need to succeed.
So it's about setting people up for success.
Exactly. Now let's shift focus again and talk about humility and its role in leadership.
Humility is a big one.
Sterling tells a story from way back when he was an intern at a department store. He was told not to sell items that were on display, but then his manager decided to sell a display dresser to a customer who really wanted it.
Oh, wow.
Even though Sterling had already told the customer no, he put his ego aside and did what his manager said without complaining. It was a small thing, but it showed humility in putting the store's success first, even if it meant not being right. That's a tough one.
It is.
It reminds us that real leadership isn't about always being right. It's about doing what's best for the team and for the company, and sometimes that means swallowing your pride and going with the flow.
Right.
And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with disagreeing with your boss. Even when you think you're right, there's a time to speak up and a time to back off and support the decision that's been made.
So pick your battles.
Exactly. It's about being smart and realizing that sometimes the bigger win is letting go of your ego and focusing on what's good for everyone.
Now, this next part of the book really hit home for me. Trust your preparation. Sterling talks about how to avoid that post-exam anxiety in law school, something I think we can all relate to in different ways.
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
He talks about how after a really hard exam, he wanted to go over every question with his classmates to compare answers and second-guess himself.
It's so easy to do that.
It is. But his mentor gave him some great advice. Trust your preparation. Let go of the need to overanalyze and move on.
Good advice.
It's about believing in the work you've put in and not letting doubts take over. We've all felt that, right? After a presentation, a job interview, or even sending an important email, that feeling of, did I do enough, can be overwhelming.
It can.
But Sterling's saying we need to trust in ourselves. And the effort we've put in, worrying about what we could have done differently, only makes us anxious and stops us from moving on.
He's right.
It's about shifting our focus from what we might have done wrong to what we did right in terms of preparation and effort. And it's about realizing that we can't control the outcome, but we can control how we react to it.
Now let's talk about a quality that's super important for dealing with the ups and downs of the business world. Adaptability.
Being able to roll with the punches.
Exactly. Sterling believes that being able to embrace change, to adjust your plans when you need to, is crucial for success in today's world where things are constantly changing.
So being flexible.
Yes. He encourages us to see change as an opportunity, not something to be afraid of.
I like that.
He tells the story about a time when he was leading a team at the automotive parts manufacturer. Because of some unexpected restructuring, his team got split up and he was moved to a new department.
Oh, wow.
It was a big change, but Sterling saw it as a chance to learn new things and get more experience. And guess what? It led to a promotion.
That's awesome.
It's a reminder that sometimes the things we resist the most can actually help us grow the most.
It's about having a growth mindset, being open to new things, and knowing that change is going to happen. The more adaptable we are, the better we can handle the tough stuff and grab the opportunities that come our way.
Now let's talk about something that's hard but necessary for growth. Owning up to your mistakes.
Nobody likes to admit they're wrong.
Sterling emphasizes that admitting when you've messed up, taking responsibility, and sincerely apologizing is actually a sign of strength, not weakness.
Interesting.
He even shares a personal story about a time when he had to apologize to his team at the global automotive dealership. He hadn't communicated something important very well.
Oh.
He acknowledged his mistake, took responsibility, and explained what he'd do to prevent it from happening again.
And they were okay with that.
They were. They appreciated his honesty and his willingness to make things right. And it actually made them trust his leadership even more.
So admitting you messed up can actually help.
It can. It's a powerful reminder that vulnerability and accountability are essential for building strong relationships and trust within a team.
It's also about setting a good example, right?
Right. When leaders are willing to admit they're wrong, it makes it okay for others to do the same.
Now let's move on to a topic that's close to my heart. The importance of being a good boss.
Sterling outlines what he believes makes a truly great leader. And it's not just about being good at your job or getting results.
What else is there?
He says it's about being a good person first and foremost, leading with integrity, empathy, and respect.
Those are big ones.
They are. He talks about being clear and honest in how you communicate, supporting your team's growth, and creating a work environment where everyone feels valued and like they can contribute their best. It's about looking at the whole picture, not just the bottom line.
So it's about more than just profits.
Way more. It's about building a culture where people feel supported, challenged, and inspired to do their best work.
Now, building on this idea of empowering your team, Sterling offers some unusual advice. Encourage your employees to ask for more work.
Wait, what?
Sounds weird, right? Most managers are trying to delegate tasks, not encourage people to take on more.
It does sound counterintuitive.
But Sterling's point is that when people want to take on new challenges, it shows they're taking initiative, that they want to grow, and that they're committed to the company's success. He shares an example from his time at the automotive parts manufacturer. When the company needed to implement a big compliance program, Sterling saw a chance.
Instead of waiting to be asked, he volunteered to lead the project. He talked about his experience and how it could benefit the company.
So he is proactive.
Exactly. It's about taking charge and showing how valuable you are to the company.
And it worked out for him.
It did. He got to run a major project, learned new skills, and advanced his career. It's a reminder that sometimes we have to create our own opportunities.
Now, let's talk about something that can be really stressful: job transitions.
Leaving a job can be tough.
It can.
Sterling believes that it should be done with grace and professionalism. He outlines a specific way to do it that involves giving enough notice, preparing for a smooth handover, and expressing gratitude to your colleagues and bosses.
So leaving on good terms.
Exactly. He even shares an example of a colleague who handled her departure really well. She trained her replacement, thoroughly thanked everyone personally, and stayed positive during her notice period.
Sounds like a good way to do it.
It is. Leaving on good terms is important for your professional reputation. You never know when you might run into those people again.
It's a small world.
It is. And it's about respecting the relationships you've built. Even when you're moving on, it's important to acknowledge the people who have helped you and leave a good impression.
So it's about more than just the job itself.
Right. It's about the people.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about something that can be both exciting and scary: seizing opportunities.
I like that topic.
Sterling says it's important to be prepared to have the skills and knowledge ready. So when an opportunity comes up, you're ready to go for it.
So be ready.
Yes. He tells a story from his time as a law firm intern, where a partner talked about how quickly opportunities can disappear in litigation.
Wow.
The partner's advice was to always be prepared, think strategically, and be ready to make fast decisions when the moment is right.
That's good advice for any field.
It is. Sterling took that advice to heart, and it helped him throughout his career. Opportunities often show up when you least expect them. The people who are ready are the ones who succeed.
So always be learning.
Exactly. It's about taking initiative, always learning, and putting yourself in a position to say yes when the right chance comes along.
Now, this next chapter really resonated with me. Lifelong learning.
Ah, yes. Sterling believes that learning shouldn't stop when you graduate.
We're always learning.
Right. He emphasizes staying curious, looking for new knowledge, and constantly expanding your skills. He even uses Warren Buffett as an example.
The Oracle of Omaha.
Exactly. Buffett is known for reading a ton and always wanting to learn, even though he's already incredibly successful.
It's inspiring.
It is. It reminds us that true leaders are always trying to improve, learn from their experiences, and stay ahead of the game.
Think about it. What are you curious about? What skills do you want to learn? There's so many ways to learn now, from online courses to books to podcasts like this. Lifelong learning is key to staying relevant, growing as a person, and staying engaged with the world around us.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about something that's often assumed to be good in business, but Sterling challenges that assumption: the illusion of metrics.
What does he mean by that?
Well, he knows that metrics are important for tracking progress and seeing where you can get better, but he warns against relying on them too much.
How come?
He argues that focusing only on numbers can lead to improvements that are only surface level, and it can even encourage people to cheat the system instead of actually getting better.
It's like that saying, what gets measured gets managed.
Exactly. But sometimes focusing too much on the numbers can make us forget what's really important, and lead to unintended consequences.
So it's about balance.
It is.
Right.
He emphasizes balancing the numbers with insights and using metrics as a guide, not as the only way to measure success. It's about looking beyond the numbers and considering the human factors that lead to success.
So the human element is key.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about something that may seem kind of boring and technical, but it's the foundation of any good company accounting.
Yeah, bite.
Sterling says that having accurate and trustworthy financial information is crucial for making smart choices, planning for the future, and following the rules.
That makes sense.
He even talks about how bad accounting practices can have really bad consequences, like making the wrong investments, having money problems, and hurting the company's reputation.
So it's more than just numbers on a page.
Way more.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that good accounting is an investment, not an expense, and it's super important for long-term success.
Now let's move on to a chapter that gives a simple but really effective strategy for being more productive and clear. Record important information.
Taking good notes.
Exactly. Sterling believes in the power of writing things down, both for your personal life and at work.
I'm a big note taker.
Me too. He argues that writing down important information not only helps us remember things, but it also frees up our minds to focus on thinking critically and solving problems.
It's like taking a weight off your shoulders.
It is. He even uses Richard Branson as an example. The founder of Virgin Group is known for always carrying in a notebook to jot down ideas.
Our brains are amazing, but they're not meant to hold on to tons and tons of information.
They can get overloaded.
Right. Having a way to write down important stuff helps us get rid of that burden and see the bigger picture.
Now, this next chapter is about something that can be really hard, but is so important for ethical leadership, reinforcing integrity and honesty.
Creating a culture of doing the right thing.
Exactly. Sterling emphasizes that it's not enough to just have a code of conduct. You have to actively promote ethical behavior, encourage open communication, and hold everyone accountable for what they do.
He gives the example of Johnson & Johnson.
A company with a great reputation.
Exactly. They've done a lot to make sure people act ethically, including training programs, open forums for discussion, and consistently enforcing their rules.
It shows that building an ethical company takes a lot of effort, and it has to be done on multiple levels.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about the role of a leader and setting the tone for the whole company.
Tone at the top.
Sterling says that what leaders do is more important than what they say, and what they allow to happen has a huge impact on the workplace culture.
Give me an example.
He highlights 2 real-world examples that show what can happen when leaders ignore bad behavior.
Yikes.
First, there's Uber.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
They had a big cultural crisis because of all the reports of harassment and discrimination. The leaders didn't deal with it, and it created a toxic workplace that ended up hurting the company's reputation.
That's bad.
It was. And then there's Wells Fargo. They had a scandal because employees were creating fake accounts to meet sales goals.
Wow.
The leaders knew about it and didn't stop it, and it led to fraud and big fines.
So ignoring bad behavior can have huge consequences.
It can. These examples show how crucial leaders are in shaping the ethical environment of their companies.
So they have a responsibility.
They do. Sterling's message is clear. Leaders need to set a good example, deal with bad behavior quickly, and create a culture where everyone values and follows ethical rules.
And that leads us to another big part of leadership, decision-making.
Sterling believes that good decision-making means having options, looking at different choices before making a final call.
So not just jumping into things.
Right. He tells a story about a strategic planning meeting at the global automotive dealership where he realized it was important to present multiple paths forward, not just one recommendation.
Having more than one option.
Exactly. It allowed for a more thorough discussion, got people more on board, and led to a stronger decision in the end.
It makes sense.
Right. The best leaders don't just make decisions, they create choices.
Now let's talk about something that's really important for long-term success, fostering innovation and creativity within a team.
Coming up with new ideas.
Exactly. Sterling says it's important to encourage people to experiment, to reward creative efforts, and to create a space where people can share their ideas without being judged.
A safe space to be creative.
He highlights some companies that have been really successful at this, like Google's 20% time, where employees can spend 20% of their time on projects they choose, and 3M's collaborative culture, which encourages teams from different departments to work together and share what they know.
Those companies understand that innovation comes from passion, curiosity, and the freedom to explore new things.
So leaders shouldn't just wait for innovation to happen.
No.
They need to actively encourage it.
Right. They need to create the right environment and a culture where people feel comfortable being creative.
Now let's move on to a topic that's super important for leadership emotional intelligence.
Being in tune with your own emotions and the emotions of others.
Exactly. Sterling says that's key for building trust, communicating effectively, and handling conflict in a constructive way.
He even tells a story about a time when his own emotional awareness helped him calm things down with a coworker.
What happened?
He realized his coworker was frustrated because he was stressed and overwhelmed. So instead of getting defensive, Sterling was empathetic and understanding.
That's great.
It shows how emotional intelligence can help us deal with difficult relationships and build stronger connections.
Building on that idea of emotional intelligence, Sterling also talks about how important adaptability is in leadership.
Being able to adjust to new situations.
Right. He argues that being able to adjust to changing situations, embrace new challenges, and learn from setbacks is super important for navigating the business world where things are always changing.
He uses Netflix as an example.
A company that's known for being able to change and adapt.
Exactly. They've been able to stay ahead of the game in the entertainment industry because they're willing to embrace change, take risks, and constantly come up with new things.
So they're not afraid to try new things.
Nope. It's a reminder that the best leaders are the ones who are okay with uncertainty, who are willing to experiment, and who see change as a chance to grow, not a threat.
Now let's talk about something that can be tough, but is essential for growth, owning up to our mistakes.
Nobody likes to admit they messed up.
I know.
But Sterling says that admitting when you're wrong, taking responsibility, and apologizing shows strength, not weakness.
He even shares a personal story.
He does. It's about a time when he had to apologize to his team at the global automotive dealership. He hadn't communicated something clearly. He admitted his mistake, took responsibility, and explained how he would prevent it from happening again.
That takes guts.
It does. But the team appreciated his honesty and his willingness to fix things. And it actually made them trust him more as a leader.
So it's about being human.
It is. It's a powerful reminder that being vulnerable and accountable builds strong relationships and trust.
And it sets a good example for the team.
Exactly. Now let's move on to a chapter that's really practical. Embracing good enough when perfection isn't necessary.
Letting go of perfectionism.
Sterling challenges this idea that everything has to be perfect.
I struggle with that.
A lot of people do.
Yep.
He argues that knowing when good enough is actually good enough frees up our time and energy for the stuff that really needs to be excellent.
It's prioritizing.
Right. It's about setting realistic goals and not getting bogged down in little details that don't matter that much.
It's about finding that balance between doing your best and knowing when it's okay to let go of the need for everything to be absolutely perfect.
Now, this next chapter offers a really interesting take on resolving conflicts and being fair, navigating the three sides of every investigation.
Sounds intriguing.
Sterling believes that understanding how people see things differently is really important when you're dealing with investigations, whether it's in your personal life or at work.
So perspective matters.
It does. He emphasizes that there are usually three sides to every story. What the person reporting it says, what the person being accused says, and the truth, which is often somewhere in the middle.
That's a good point.
He gives an example from his time at the automotive parts manufacturer. An employee reported a coworker for doing something unethical.
Oh.
The person reporting it was emotional and gave lots of details, while the person being accused had a completely different story, saying it was all a misunderstanding.
Two sides of the same coin.
Exactly. Sterling realized that the truth was probably somewhere in between, so he did a thorough investigation, talking to both people and gathering evidence.
What did he find?
He figured out what really happened, which involved some miscommunication and things being misinterpreted.
So getting all the facts is important.
It is. It shows how taking the time to listen to everyone get information objectively and try to find common ground can lead to a fairer resolution.
Now let's talk about something that can be super stressful and distracting in our world: email.
Email, the never-ending inbox.
Sterling's a big fan of what's called batching your email responses. To be more efficient and get back some of your valuable time,
I've heard of that.
instead of stopping your work all the time to check emails, he suggests setting aside specific times during the day to deal with them.
That makes a lot of sense.
He even uses Cal Newport as an example. He's a famous author and professor who says that batching his emails helps him stay productive.
So it's about being strategic.
It is. It's a reminder that we don't have to be slaves to our inboxes. We can set boundaries, create a system, and take back control of our time.
Now let's talk about something that's often overlooked but is so important for leadership: sleep.
Sleep is underrated.
Sterling emphasizes that getting enough quality sleep is crucial for our brains, our creativity, and our emotional well-being.
It makes a difference.
He even tells a story about a time when he was burning out and realized he wasn't getting enough rest.
What did he do?
He started making sleep a priority, and it made a huge difference. He felt more energetic, more focused, and better able to handle the demands of his job.
Sleep can make or break you.
It can. He even uses Jeff Bezos as an example. The founder of Amazon is known for making sleep a priority because he knows how important it is for making good decisions.
So even the most successful people prioritize sleep.
They do. It's a reminder that sleep isn't a luxury. It's an investment in our physical and mental health, and it's essential for good.
And we're back for the last part of our deep dive into Foundational Leadership Lessons by Jordan Sterling. It's been a really interesting look at his experiences and the lessons he's learned along the way.
It's amazing how much we've covered, from that one-room schoolhouse to his leadership roles in big companies. You know what really stands out to me about Sterling's approach? It's how he connects all those different experiences into a clear way of thinking about leadership.
That's what's so cool about this book. It's not just a bunch of rules, it's his own story. And that makes it way more relatable and helpful for the listener.
Right. It's not just theory, it's stuff he's actually lived through. And that's what makes those aha moments so powerful. When Sterling talks about things like saying, "I don't know," or being okay with good enough, it's not just an idea, it's something he's done and seen work.
Think about that for a minute. We often feel like we have to have all the answers to look like we know everything. But what Sterling's saying is that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it can actually make you a better leader.
It creates trust and makes people feel like they can learn and grow together, and it takes the pressure off. We don't have to be perfect all the time. It's okay to admit when we need help. Actually, that's often how we learn the most.
It's about creating a space where everyone's always learning, both individually and as a team. And that makes me think of another important thing Sterling talks about: mentorship and coaching.
He really believes that helping others develop is one of the most rewarding parts of being a leader. It's not just about teaching what you know, it's about creating a relationship where everyone benefits.
He talks about his own mentors who helped him throughout his career and how important those relationships were. It makes you think about the people who've inspired you, challenged you, and helped you grow. Those are the people who can really help you navigate the ups and downs of leadership and reach your full potential.
And it's not just about being mentored, it's about being a mentor too. Sterling encourages us to share our own experiences and knowledge with others who are coming up behind us.
It's like paying it forward, helping to create the next generation of leaders. Speaking of making a positive impact, Sterling also has some great advice about handling investigations fairly. He talks about understanding different perspectives and how there's usually more than one side to every story.
It's about going into investigations with an open mind, looking for the truth, and making sure everyone feels heard and treated with respect. And it's about creating a culture where people feel safe speaking up and know that their concerns will be taken seriously.
It's about building a culture of accountability, where everyone's responsible for their actions. And this leads into something I think a lot of us struggle with, especially these days: prioritizing our well-being. Sterling talks about this a lot in the book, emphasizing how important it is to take care of ourselves both physically and mentally.
He talked about sleep, exercise, nutrition, and the need to disconnect from work to recharge. He even talks about his own experience with burnout and how he learned to take care of himself.
It's a good reminder that we can't give our best if we're running on empty. We need to take care of ourselves to be good leaders, partners, parents, friends, and just good humans.
Exactly. When we're well-rested, healthy, and feeling good emotionally, we're better equipped to deal with stress, make smart decisions, and connect with people in a meaningful way.
And that brings us to Sterling's final message, which is a really positive one. He reminds us that leadership is a journey, and we're always learning and growing. He wants us to embrace the challenges, celebrate the successes, and always try to be better versions of ourselves.
It's not about being perfect, it's about constantly learning, adapting, and making a positive impact on the world.
And that's what makes foundational leadership lessons so valuable. It's not just about leadership, it's about life. It's about finding our own paths, building on our strengths, and using our experiences to make a difference.
It's about leading with authenticity, integrity, and a genuine desire to make things better.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, think about what really stood out to you. What are the key takeaways you'll be using in your own journey as a leader? What are some things you're going to try in your own life? Remember, leadership isn't just a title, it's a way of being. And it starts with each of us. with the choices we make, the actions we take, and our commitment to making a positive impact.
And that's a powerful message to leave everyone with. Leadership isn't some far-off goal, it's something we can all do in our own ways.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep learning, keep leading, and keep making a difference.